Hello, I'm Craig Constantine.
And I'm Anette Carlisle.
Hi, Annette. Welcome to the show. I often joke it's a street race. It just goes like 0 to 60. Doesn't have airbags. There's no doors. I don't know if it
Sounds
has
fun.
brakes. We do a little bit of chatting in the pre-call. And first of all, mad props. Congratulations on reaching, basically, you're at 100,
Close.
which is super, super awesome. By the time, 100 is a nice round number. And everybody always says, do a retrospective. And I think most podcasters don't want to sit back and go, here's what I've learned after doing 100 episodes. But it is a milestone that few people reach. And I suspect you're probably already looking forward like, wow, what would 200 be like? So I think the place to go today is to talk about how your podcast, and I'm hypothesizing, how your podcast has been a source of energy for you. So the last year and a half has just been crazy for everybody. And I think from what I understand, you've been continuing in your podcast journey. You haven't slowed down at all. In fact, I think maybe there's been, like, for you, an increase in focus, and you have a very you have a goal. Like, your podcast has a stated purpose. Like my other this podcast, they're just like, it's Craig talking to people, whereas you have a goal. So I'm just wondering, looking back from 100 and like looking at what you've accomplished, in the last year and a half of chaos, what about your podcast has surprised you in terms of like working toward that goal?
Well, I used to travel a lot, and I would do a lot of my interviews, on site where, in Austin or wherever I was. So that quit as of last March. But it's been kind of nice to have the podcast to focus on and to work on during COVID crisis. It's been a way to share some really relevant information around the issues happening right now, not just in Texas or Amarillo, but, across the nation. When it was important to do that, of course, there was good reason to not do that so people could have other things to listen to.
Right.
But of course, my most popular podcast is the one with my husband, who's an infectious disease doctor, talking about the history of pandemics. So go figure. I'm Annette. Mine is Annette on education, so I'm educating folks about pandemics during a pandemic.
So do you find that it's become a labor of love, or has it become a bit of a slog? Or at any point was there a fear of it becoming, the stone around your neck, the podcast itself, I mean?
If you'd seen my husband talking about how excited I was when I first got started podcasting, I think you would know the answer to that. He just said, I haven't seen you this excited in a long time about something new. And so it has been exciting. It can be a slog because I've committed to doing 100 weekly podcasts. In the summer, I decided nobody really wanted to listen to a deep discussion on school finance or education or politics, although maybe we need to be in Texas right now. So I kind of moved in the summer to something just called Summer Shorts. And I do just kind of whatever. I've done some re-releases. So when things get a little too heavy, I've leaned back and just said, hey, I'm going to make it work, whatever. I will pick it back up, after 100, and I may not do weekly. I haven't decided that yet, but
are you the kind of person who like sets really, really hard goals for yourself? I had a friend once say, and I forget the exact wording, but it was something like, it takes a really special person to set an actual goal that you can't achieve. And at first I was like, what do you mean? I can set crazy goals. But if the goal is really crazy, you don't really try. And what he meant was to really set a stretch goal that's going to push you. And I'm guessing you're the kind of person who sets those really difficult, but not, patently insane challenges and goals. And I'm just wondering, has the podcast maybe helped you learn how to like reel the goals back in a little bit, or be more mindful of like what you're trying to set yourself as a challenge?
Well, I'm an evolutionary biologist, so I believe in adjust
Hormesis
and adapt.
For the win, right?
So if I need to, swivel and do something else for a little bit, like the summer shorts, I'm flexible enough to do that. But yes, I'm pretty good at setting significant goals and trying to achieve them. And, I'm still working on them.
Hmm. Is there anything that you think you did wrong in your podcast that you're like, yeah, but something that you would have, like, there's no way to go over, like, not a rabbit hole, but like I had to do that and I had to learn the lesson. And then I decided that that's not where I want to go.
Well, no, I think I've stuck pretty true. In fact, I recently did a re-release of my trailer with a little bit of intro to it, just talking about how I didn't know what I was doing back then. You were one of the coaches or all stars or whatever in the podcasting fellowship 4 that I was in. And I was originally going to do a podcast with a friend of mine. He's been on some of my podcasts, helped me do a few of them, but he couldn't do it at the time. So I just ended up shifting to who I am. And it's Annette on education, because that's been my background. That's been my focus a lot. And so I really just told the stories of the things we've done in our community. I've interviewed the folks that I've gotten to know over the 25 plus years as an elected official in Texas. And it's really, I hit the nail on the head with that trailer when I go back and listen to it, because it's all those things put together, including politics, unfortunately. And it's not gone viral or anything like that. And I do want to stir up, or make a ruckus, as Seth would say, a little bit more. So that's where I'm hoping to go.
So many, I think of so many questions and I'm like, yeah, but which is the best one? If I think most people who listen, I don't know, my mom doesn't even listen to this, but I think people who listen to this particular show, because it's a companion, it's meant to go with the community for podcasters. Everybody who's listening, this is like talking about street racing with a bunch of people who work on their cars all weekend. And there are so many things that we've all, like, everybody's been there, done that for everything. Like you and I had a tech problem at the beginning of this call, and we're both like, okay, we're back, like press record. Like, it's just, whatever, or like gear fails, things go wrong, guests don't show up. I don't mean you, but like the regular people that we try to bring, regular guests, they don't show up, or they're nervous, or they have imposter syndrome. And there's just so many things that we've all seen that it kind of becomes a challenge to figure out, like, okay, if you want to talk to other podcasters, Annette, what do you want to ask them? Like, we're on this show. Like, what is something that you want to ask? I mean, it doesn't have to be me, but I'm the only person in the room. But like, what do you want to ask everybody else?
I hope you've gotten as much out of podcasting as I have. And, I just want to share how important and meaningful it's been to me to share my friends, my knowledge, my friends' knowledge, and just the journey over the work we've done in our community, in the state, and beyond with others, because podcasting is a wonderful format to share information, to share how-tos. I didn't really think I wanted to do a podcast. I thought I wanted to do more of a video series, because I do a lot of graphs and, all that. But I really think that would have fallen on deaf ears more. And this has been a way to have just conversations about the issues without stuffing data down people's throats like I usually do. So,
I wonder how much of, trying to find a nice way to say, your drive to be detailed and thorough. I'm wondering how much of that, so that you, like you just said, you have to tamp that down, because that doesn't really work in an audio medium. And I'm wondering if that made you better at conveying your message or your story or reaching your goal, because it's like having your, like, one hand tied behind your back. You're like, well, I got to learn how to drive with one hand, because you can't do the thing that you were normally used to doing, or the thing that you thought was the best way to do it. So I'm just wondering, have you noticed any difference in other things that you do? Like, all right, I've now mastered jamming it through this suboptimal medium in terms of data and detail.
Yeah. Well, I've run for public office at the state level, and part of the training I did there, and in some other work I've done, is really honing your message. And I really tried to pull that into my work, even when I was doing, a lot of data dumps on people, I would, pick out 2 or 3 things and say, these are the things we really need to focus on. And how do we move the needle on these? But podcasting certainly made me do that even more. It's like, okay, I can't, I could put it in the show notes, whatever,
Right.
but how many people actually go and find that? And maybe some, but not everybody listening. So it's really made me, tell the story more than show the numbers.
Do you have any, I was going to say, do you have any urge to me, it's like being a kid in a candy store, right? So like I start working on a project, and it takes so many episodes and so many hours to even figure out what the thing is actually going to be. And then it's kind of like you get it up on a plane. You're like, well, this is really cool. I'm having a ton of fun. But then the kid in the candy store goes, ooh, aisle 2 has gummy bears, and like, I want to just like, this is awesome. But like, just jump away from it and run to something completely different. It's still a podcast. And that's kind of what I'm doing, because this is like the 5th different show that I have. But I'm wondering, have you had the urge to just, well, now that I know how to do this, I'm going to go do Annette on quilting or something completely different?
Yes. And stay tuned.
Oh, I didn't mean to try and get the scoop.
No, but absolutely. Several projects are in mind and in the works. So we'll see where they go.
Do you have trouble explaining it to people? Like I think projects are always better if there's at least somebody, to talk about it. And I find that it's rare that I can find someone that I can be like, oh my God, and just go rabbit hole deep bonkers about the project. Do you have trouble? Like, I call it the crazy version of Craig. I have trouble keeping the crazy version of Craig like under the hat. They ask me, how's the podcast? And they don't have any expectation of the fire hose they're about to get. Do you have trouble like reining in your passion for podcasting, or is it something that's compartmentalized?
Well, it's sharing information. It's not through podcasting. So I have some friends whose job has been to hold me back from basically hurting myself by doing too many crazy things. And in your case, that's projects and your parkour. But in my case, it's more, okay, you got to slow down, Annette. People can't take in the fire hose, as you say. So, but it's fun. It's exciting to have the projects and to have vision for more projects ahead. What else would you do? I don't want to just be static and not keep learning and sharing the information that I think is important and relevant, because part of my job is to connect people and organizations and such. And part of it's to make to influence others, to influence the folks who are making decisions at higher levels than in my pod cave right here. So.
Yeah, I was looking. Do you actually have foam sound deadening sheets? I'm like, whoa.
I do.
I'm lazy. I'm just sitting in my living room.
Well, I did this after Seth talked about doing his shower. Yes. So I've got this perfect little closet, but it doesn't give me a lot of wiggle room.
So. Yeah, I don't have we have a small house. I don't have a ton of room in the house. And I was like, oh, I had a room set up that was like my pod cave, and it was my office. But my wife got switched to working remotely. So we're like, well, all right, we need, so we like opposite diagonal corners of the house, so as far apart as we can get.
Well, you need to do an episode on how podcasting changes how you rearrange your house, because that's certainly, I was thinking about that beforehand.
Everybody is laughing.
Yeah.
Every podcaster listening is laughing. Oh my God. Well, the time my spouse caught me under the pillow for it, or the time people podcasting with like comforters over their head on the bed to like kill the whole room. Yeah, it's totally a thing. It's such a challenge to what's the Pareto principle, 80-20, like to try and be mindful of, just you and I having good mics, and we're using a system that records the wave on each end. So we have the full audio is like going to be really good. And then I'm just going to jam it through my audio deck and like be done in 2 minutes. And it's so much better than like trying to tape a phone call or record a Zoom call. And so for me, that's always the hardest part, is not getting like way off in the weeds on the latest shiny thing. And, I'll try all the different audio editing. So it's like, no, just pick one.
Well, fortunately, I have a son who does video, audio, editing, shooting, all that kind of stuff. And he's a sound wizard, and he can do stuff with his knowledge that I can't begin to do. So I hired him to do it when
That's the spirit.
at least when it's challenging,
Yeah,
So.
I'm a big fan of like, do the cost calculation. Like, what would you have to pay me, rhetorically, what would you have to pay me per hour to dig a ditch? And I don't know that I have an exact rate, but if somebody asked me, I could think about it for a minute or two and probably come up with an actual number. Or like, I had a really close friend of mine say, "Hey, could you give me a ride to go pick up a car I want to buy?" And I went, "Sure." And then he told me it was like 4 hours one way to the, like 2 states over. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'd rather spend the 4 hours riding the car with you than I would, I could, like, that's worth a lot of money. That time is worth a lot. So I think podcasting has kind of indirectly taught me to be really mindful of like, what am I doing with my time? Do I spend, if I spend 2 hours doing something, then am I making the art? Am I making the artifact because I want the artifact and I value the thing? Early on, I don't want to say I was obsessed with download numbers, but in the beginning, in like 2018 or something, I was really obsessed with like, publish the episode. And then like every 6 hours, I'm like checking the numbers. Now I'm just like, it's okay. And then like 2 years ago, I had a data disaster and like my stuff's in a backup in a database, but I only have the last 2 years of data ready. It's almost like, I'm glad I'm not fixated on total downloads because I have no idea, so it's taught me a lot about perspective. Plus having, however many 200, whatever conversations with people is super helpful.
One thing we have not really articulated, but I want to make sure we capture it, is how much of this helps me fulfill my creative needs. For those creatives, podcasting is a huge body of work. And I'm very proud of my body of work. I'm sure you are as well.
Amen, yeah.
And, some more than others maybe, but collectively it's
there's some that have some duct tape on them, but I love them for their faults too,
But and it's going to be there. It's there next year for what I recorded 2 years ago or, whatever. And that to me is wonderful. And as I come up with new ideas or new interview suggestions or thoughts or angles or, and as the world shifts, and it's done a lot of shifting in 2020 and 2021, it's not done shifting. And there's been a lot of things out there. And, I might chase them a little bit and bring them into my podcast, but they're not going to divert me away from my main focus. I brought in, because so many of these things overlap, and you can't talk about race and equity, only, if I'm talking about education, of course I have to talk about those, but I'm not going to get sidetracked and only do that right now, at least. So, things like that.
Yeah. Maybe let's end with what's something that you would have told Anette, on like day one of the podcast journey.
I was so nervous when we started, and part of what you learn to do is listen to yourself on the on the mic or in recordings, and I hated that. I've been a public figure for decades. I'm used to talking in public but for some reason that just really bothered me. And I would tell myself to just get over that, and that what I have to share is so much more important than my insecurities keeping me from sharing it. And to not ask somebody to give me permission to do that. Just go ahead. This is part of my leadership journey. Just do it.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. I always like I said, it comes to a stop in a hurry, but I think that's a really good place to end. I think we've managed to cover a wide array of things for super short time spent.
Thank you,
Annette,
Craig.
it was a pleasure. I don't think we've done anything recorded before, although it's hard for me to remember.
No, we have. We have. You're on my podcast.
Uh-oh. I'm sorry.
I'm glad you remembered that.
I hate when I do that. I hate when I forget people. All right, now I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that.
Well, it was one we did during class. It was your generous spirit saying, anybody wants to interview me. You had done Aikido, I had done Aikido, and I thought, okay, that's a connection.
Oh, is that? But you actually published that. Oh, I have to go. I'm like, did I listen to that? I have to go listen to that. Sorry.
Well, you gave me permission because I asked you.
Oh yeah, no. I'm not doubting that it's publishable. I was just like, wow, how do I not remember that? Anyway, I'm sorry.
But I brought up something I have to bring back is the leadership you can do through podcasting. And you're doing it in the leadership, in the podcasting community for sure. And through your other podcasts. But people need to understand that's a way to lead.
I would definitely agree. Thank you for saying so. Well, cool. All right. Well, let's call it a podcast. Thanks, Annette.
Let's call it a podcast.
Congratulations on that ginormous, awesome milestone number.
Coming up.
Go, go, go.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.